This is the first time that this court has been made aware of this, Lieutenant. For the love of God, Judge. Just a moment, Colonel. Yes, Judge. Please proceed, Lieutenant. Your Honor. You will speak when requested, Colonel. Please continue, Lieutenant. Your Honor, with the exception of an empty seat on the plane, which had a portrait of C.J. Morgan on it, a cadet who had died in an accident in the previous year, deeply moved also to be joined by his father watching on. The ceremony had included no friends, nor family of graduating cadets, while cadets had been required to wear masks as they marched to their seats spaced about 6 feet apart on the plane. Only once seated, they had been allowed to unmask while the President, Donald Trump, who had never worn a mask in public, had addressed the assembly unmasks. The cheering cadets in full military dress were to serve only as a backdrop for a re-election campaign in which Mr. Trump, who was faltering at the time in the polls, seeking to project strength as a commander-in-chief. The President, Lieutenant, is that correct, Colonel? The President was most insistent. However, in preparation for the President, the West Point cadets had been divided into 4 groups of about 250, with strict orders not to mingle outside their cohort, keeping the virus possibility for infection contained. They ate in shifts in the dining hall, with food placed on long tables by kitchen staff who would quickly leave to reduce the possibility of passing on infection. And there had been 4 designated paths for cadets who wanted to go for socially distanced runs with masks. To ensure an infection-free graduation ceremony, the cadets were tested for the virus when they arrived back on campus. Very, very thorough, in my opinion. Lieutenant, what do you have to say? However, before an EUA can be issued. EUA, Lieutenant? Yes, Your Honor. EUA, an emergency use authorization. The first determination had been promulgated on February 4th, 2020 for the PCR testing, and the second had been issued on March 27th, 2020 for what had only been described as medical countermeasures for COVID-19, not vaccines. And all of this during the period when the cadets had been sent home to safety and before they had been ordered back to return to West Point. And if I may, please continue, Your Honor. Please proceed, Lieutenant. Thank you, Your Honor. Before an EUA may be issued, and this is an important point, the Secretary of Health and Human Services must first declare that circumstances exist justifying the authorization based on one of 4 determinations, including, inter alia, a determination by the Secretary of Defense that there is a military emergency or a significant potential for a military emergency involving a heightened risk to the United States military forces, including personnel operating under the authority of Title 10 or Title 15, of attack with a 1. Biological, chemical, radiological, or nuclear agent or agents, or 2. An agent or agent that may cause or otherwise associated with an imminently life-threatening and specific risk to United States military forces. However, at no time did the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War ever issue such a determination. There, y'all, the Defense Secretary never said we had any biological weapon attack. How long was this going, Judge? Lieutenant, if the Defense Secretary had never claimed that there was a biological weapon attacking soldiers or cadets. I must agree with the Colonel here. Do you have anything further? Yes, Your Honor. The Health and Human Services Secretary, pursuant to Section 564, can only issue an EUA upon his sole authority when there is, in his estimation, a public health emergency that affects or has significant potential to affect national security, defined as military forces, or the health and security of United States citizens living abroad, and that involves a CBRN agent or agents, or disease or condition that may be attributable to such agent or agents, not infectious or highly contagious diseases. Your source for the information, Lieutenant? Again, this is 85 Federal Register 26 and also 85, the latter of which had been published in law on April 1st, 2020, 2 months before the commencement exercises. Hence, clearly a biological agent, as described under 18 U.S.C. Section 178A1, early designated as a CBRN agent or agents, and later determined to have been a chimeric virus, which can only come from a lab, as declared under 42 CFR Section 73.13a, had conducted a force projection movement to result in 20,630 confirmed cases globally, with 20,471 confirmed cases in China alone, resulting in 425 deaths in that nation, almost a melee massacre, with 159 confirmed cases outside of China in 23 countries, with 1 death in just 2 months after its first notice by February 4, 2020. And not one law enforcement or military force was deployed to address this expanding capability that today is responsible for more deaths than Hitler in the Holocaust, some 7.2 million worldwide. At its late as June 20th or June 2020, Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Opper, a West Point spokesman, had still believed it might be possible that 15 cadets who had initially tested positive but showed no symptoms had at some point been considered a transmissibility threat, which is rather quite impossible for a CBRN agent or agent. Colonel, how do you respond to this? Y'all know, we had a pandemic, highly contagious disease. We did what we had to do to protect the Corps cadets and others at West Point. And I would gladly, with honor, do it all the same way again. Are we finished? But Lieutenant, you had made a reference to this CB something or other. Can you elaborate upon that for the court? That the term CBRN stands for chemical, biological, radiological, and or nuclear, and relates to a very specific type of hazard that may be encountered during an incident. The term CBRN is generally reserved for the deliberate release of hazardous materials, such as in a terrorist attack, whereas the term hazmat is used for accidental release or exposure to toxic industrial material, like the lab leak about which the current administration claims had caused the pandemic. All cadets entering as plebes commenced 6 weeks of cadet basic training, to include instruction in what had been formerly denominated as nuclear, biological, and chemical NBC training. Indisputably, the purpose of the United States Army Chemical, Biological, Radiological, Nuclear School, USACBRNS training guidance is to codify the operations to enable the success of USACBRNS. At least that is according to the Army School located at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. And we may safely assume that these soldiers are not being taught like cadets apparently at West Point only best way to avoid catching cold. Or they would be at Fort Sam Houston with the Medical Corps, and not on Fort Leonard Wood with Army Engineers and Chemical Corps soldiers. The court would be inclined to agree with that statement, Lieutenant. There's no need to be facetious. But what is your question for this witness? You have been warned before. Colonel, when you had completed the DD Form 2977 Composite Risk Assessment Sheet, which you indicated that you had, before you had implemented your plan to go through with the outdoor and in-person commencement exercises involving 1,113 graduating cadets, what did you place on the block to identify the risk for which you had dutifully and diligently prepared yourself to address and protect these cadets? You don't have to answer that question, Colonel. I'll answer the question. You want answers, Lieutenant? I'll give you answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Colonel, did you disrupt the academic instruction of almost 5,000 cadets? Did you order over 1,000 cadets to march onto a parade field protected only by a piece of cotton cloth as a reasonably calculated plan to address a determination from the HHS Secretary that there is a public health emergency or a significant potential for a public health emergency that affects or has a significant potential to affect national security or the health and security of the United States citizens living abroad, and that involves
You don't have to answer that question, Colonel.
You're goddamn right I did. Your Honor, this court is aware that pursuant to Article 32A1B UCMJ, on the regulation prescribed by the President, a preliminary hearing need not be held if the accused submits a written waiver to the convening authority, and the convening authority determines that hearing is not required. And a hearing shall be held before referral of charges and specifications for trial by a general court-martial. And shall be conducted by an impartial entertainment colonel detailed by the convening authority in accordance with Section B. You pedantic piece of shit. Get your hands off me. I can walk.
The court will take this under advisement.
You have anything further, Lieutenant?
No, nothing further, Your Honor. This session is adjourned.
And good job, Lieutenant.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.
Honest.
It's acquaintance. Always.